because he is a problem. And so you never should have somebody that is sitting that high and is going to sit up here and threaten a sitting member of Congress when she knew good and well, if she watched the entire thing, that I specifically told protesters to make sure you consult with lawyers, just like I've told protesters over and over and over in the history of me advising people to go out and exercise their constitutional right. The fact that there are other sitting members that have received letters of threat from this new DOJ tells me that they are about retribution and they are not about following the law. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I first just want to begin with a news alert. Guess what? Joe Biden is not the president anymore. So maybe we can move on. Maybe we can move into the present, because it seems like we are living in the past. And listen, these are not the good old days, you know, like you used to sit around and your grandparents would talk to you about what used to happen. What we need to be talking about is how we are going to legislate, because I think that some of my colleagues have confused what our jobs are. And I get that we're sitting in judiciary. And so it may seem as if we are here to be litigators, but we are here to be legislators, which means that we are supposed to be writing laws, not trying to have our own trials and determine whether or not something is true or not, or whatever the case is, or who should be sued, who shouldn't be sued. All I know is that a great American hero, a good senator out of New Jersey, said something to the effect yesterday as he was shattering the record for holding the floor, a record that had been held by another racist in this country. As he shattered that, he said something about the fact that this should not be about left versus right. It should be about right versus wrong. And I am going to tell you that I want us to focus on right versus wrong. The reason that we are struggling right now in this country as it relates to people not trusting agencies, honestly, a lot of it is because of elected leaders. Let me tell you, one of the things that the chairman and I actually agree upon, we don't agree on a lot, is that we both know that there has been a sharp incline as it relates to threats upon our lives. Regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on, we both know and agree that as sitting members of Congress, we both are enduring more death threats than anybody should in this country. And I believe that it is because of the divisive rhetoric, and it is because of the selective enforcement of things. And so when we have, and I'm gonna be clear, because I had remarks and I'm going a whole other way. To have the sitting Attorney General go on, and I'm gonna call it faux news. I know some of y'all love it, but it's fake to me. To have her go on Fox News and to then decide that she wanted to send a threat to me, it was wrong. Because here it is, she is the highest law enforcement agent in this country, and people are watching and they are consuming this information, and they are believing that simply because I decided that I wanted to exercise my right to free speech, which I am not abridged from doing, that she then wanted to then politicize something that should not be politicized. I don't like Elon Musk. I'm gonna say it 50,000 times. I don't like him. I don't like that he going out there and he firing people. I think that he's a crook, because somehow the rest of us can't sit around and get whatever federal contracts we want. The rest of us can't sit around and get law enforcement and get them somehow ordained as federal law enforcement to protect him. The rest of us can't get our dealerships protected by the federal government. That is somebody that is operating above the law. For whatever reason, just because he has a lot of money, more money than everybody else. And yes, I am happy to see that on my birthday, which is what I said, there were peaceful protests around this world against him, because he is a problem. And so you never should have somebody that is sitting that high and is going to sit up here and threaten a sitting member of Congress when she knew good and well, if she watched the entire thing, that I specifically told protesters to make sure you consult with lawyers, just like I've told protesters over and over and over in the history of me advising people to go out and exercise their constitutional right. The fact that there are other sitting members that have received letters of threat from this new DOJ tells me that they are about retribution and they are not about following the law. The reason that our party, or I won't even say our party, our country is torn apart is because we can't even agree on right versus wrong. This should not be left versus right. The only thing that we're asking is that we have law enforcement that will show up when there is an actual crime. If somebody calls and says, hey, I need you to investigate this cyber crime, or I need you to investigate this child pornography, or I need you to investigate this robbery, then we want somebody to show up, and we don't want them to look at us and act as if just because I'm black or because I'm woman, that I am not worthy of having that case investigated, because we have an administration that is continuously railing against diversity, equity, and inclusion, or we don't need people that show up that feel like diversity should not be valued. That is why we should have somebody that may show up and looks like me. The final thing that I'll say, because you've been gracious, is this. When I first became a public defender, I had no criminal defense experience. And I walked in and I told my boss, Charlie, I said, listen, you should hire me. He said, why? I said, because I'm black. Charlie looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, let me tell you something. When I walk in, I'm going to walk in with a level of rapport and understanding that maybe some of my other colleagues will not. Charlie offered me my job, and I worked my butt off, and I worked really, really hard for all of my clients, not just those that look like me, and that is what it looks like to serve. Thank you.
Representative Jasmine Crockett did not hold back during this hearing. What started as a routine Judiciary Committee session quickly turned into a direct attack on Attorney General Pam Bondi and what Crockett described as a Justice Department driven more by political retaliation than actual justice. Right from the beginning, Crockett made it clear she was frustrated with how much time lawmakers spend reliving old political fights instead of dealing with what is happening right now in the country. She mocked the constant focus on Joe Biden and argued that Congress should focus on governing instead of acting like cable news commentators or courtroom prosecutors. But the deeper point she was making was about trust. Crockett argued that Americans are losing faith in institutions because political leaders continue fueling division, outrage, and selective enforcement. And she specifically pointed toward the Justice Department under Bondi as part of that problem. The hearing became much more serious when Crockett talked about the increasing number of threats members of Congress are receiving. She even acknowledged that this is one issue she and Chairman Jim Jordan agree on. Lawmakers on both sides are facing a dangerous rise in death threats and intimidation. That mattered because it shifted the conversation away from politics as entertainment and reminded viewers that political rhetoric can have real-world consequences. And then Crockett directly accused Bondi of making the situation worse. She said Bondi used a Fox News appearance to send what Crockett described as a threat against her after Crockett publicly criticized Elon Musk and supported peaceful protests against him. That accusation is extremely significant because Bondi is not just another political commentator. She is the Attorney General, the highest law enforcement official in the country. Crockett's argument was simple. When someone in that position appears to target elected officials for their political speech, it creates fear and sends a dangerous message about how power is being used. And she did something important here that viewers should notice. She repeatedly emphasized that she supported peaceful protest and lawful free speech. She pointed out that she has consistently told protesters to consult lawyers and exercise their constitutional rights legally. That distinction matters because Crockett was trying to show that criticism of Elon Musk or support for peaceful demonstrations should never be twisted into something criminal or threatening. But in her view, Bondi and the DOJ are politicizing those situations instead of protecting constitutional rights. Crockett then expanded the issue beyond herself. She claimed other Democratic lawmakers had also received threatening communications from the DOJ and argued that this reflects a broader culture of retribution coming from the department. And honestly, that is where the hearing became much bigger than one feud between two politicians. Because once people begin believing the Justice Department is targeting critics of the administration while protecting political allies, trust in the entire legal system starts to collapse. That is the danger Crockett was warning about. The DOJ is supposed to operate independently. Americans are supposed to believe investigations are based on evidence and law, not politics, ideology, or loyalty to powerful people. But Crockett argued that under Bondi, the department increasingly looks selective about who gets investigated, who gets protected, and who gets publicly targeted. She also connected this to Elon Musk, arguing that wealthy and politically connected figures appear to operate under a different set of rules than ordinary Americans. She criticized Musk's relationship with the federal government, his contracts, and the level of protection and influence she believes he receives. Whether viewers agree with her or not, the larger point was clear: Crockett believes there is one system for powerful insiders and another system for everyone else. Then the hearing shifted into a broader moral argument. Crockett said the country is becoming more divided because Americans can no longer agree on basic ideas of right and wrong. And she framed the issue as something bigger than Democrats versus Republicans. That line mattered because she was trying to present this as a question of fairness and equal treatment under the law, not just partisan politics. The final part of her remarks focused on diversity and representation in law enforcement and the justice system. Crockett shared a personal story about becoming a public defender and believing her background as a black woman helped her connect with clients who may not have trusted the system otherwise. And that story connected directly back to her larger argument about trust. Her point was that institutions work better when people feel seen, understood, and fairly represented. Because if communities stop trusting law enforcement, courts, or government agencies, the legitimacy of those institutions starts to weaken. By the end of the hearing, Crockett's message was very clear. She believes the Justice Department under Pam Bondi is becoming more political, more retaliatory, and more willing to use power against critics instead of focusing purely on justice and public safety. And whether viewers fully agree with her or not, the concerns she raised go far beyond one heated exchange. They touch on free speech, equal treatment under the law, political retaliation, public trust, and whether powerful institutions are still operating independently in a deeply divided political climate. That is why this hearing stood out. Because underneath all the tension and political fighting was a much bigger question. Can Americans still trust the Justice Department to apply the law fairly, no matter who is in power? Subscribe to Capitol Breakdown HQ for more congressional hearing breakdowns, political analysis, and accountability-focused coverage from Washington.